Adam Taxin here with Sunset Report. A little bit before the sunset, we have about 34 minutes here in Wesson, Mississippi again. Going to be on the road for a long time after this. You can see on my right a little bit of a sunset, but it's behind the trees and it's been cloudy all day, so I don't know what was going to happen with that, so I'm just going with it now. Just a couple stories here, not going to be as long as my midday broadcast. Really have to thank my contributors here, and I'm going to be focusing on one particular story which seems to be the must-read of the day. But Lori Averick in Pennsylvania brought this to my attention. You're hearing about the father of the Navy SEAL. Good timing joining now, Lori. You're hearing about the father of the Navy SEAL just so happening to be very publicly questioning Trump on the Yemen raid that had, this is again what Lori Averick is writing, questioning Trump on the Yemen raid that had been planned for months and asking for an investigation. Lori writes, his son died a hero, doing what he wanted to do. Why an investigation? If it's grief talking, then okay, very well put. I'm going to add that this guy's being the next Cindy Sheehan, remember her from the Bush administration? Wouldn't shock me if there is money exchanging hands. Would it shock you? Who knows what's really going on here? Just like who knew what was going on with Bo Bergdahl? How long did it take to find out that he was really, becoming a Muslim? So really question what the media is telling you. Do you even need me to tell you that right now? But I'd be curious to see what's really going on with the parents here. Who knows if the parents and the victim and the Navy SEAL were even on the same page with politics? I don't know. Another thing that Lori Averick writes, you maybe have heard about the George W. Bush story, that he's being a thorn in the side of President Trump in a way he never was with Barack Obama. And Lori writes this very well put and concise. After listening to George Bush's interview, I think I might be the new face of the alt-right, minus the Nazi anti-Jew thing. Well, remember, that's a label that they put on. I wouldn't say that anyone in the alt-right is necessarily anti-Jew. That's just something the media wants us to believe. We know where the real anti-Jews are. They're on the left. Maybe with a little bit here and there, but, let's not kid ourselves here. And I do want to add one thing. Rush Limbaugh did have something on, he addressed George W. Bush today at length. He had a segment which you can find at rushlimbaugh.com as a transcript if you're not a subscriber, but it's called What's George W. Bush Doing? And in sum, Limbaugh is saying that, well, it's establishment versus outsider. Are the Bushes really Republicans first? Or are they really insiders first, establishment first? And you saw, if you watched my midday report, or if you saw the reporting on the Gateway Pundit, featured this, on how Barbara Bush, the younger one, who is George W. Bush's, one of his twin daughters, is going to be the featured speaker at a Planned Parenthood event in Texas. And she's doing something, she's not a doctor. I don't know what her educational background went up to. Maybe she's a public health expert, if such a thing exists. But she's very involved in this, and she has a group that's involved in getting together volunteers and sends them to places like Planned Parenthood, and also to the Clinton Foundation, Global Foundation. So read between the lines. Who is George W. Bush really tied to? I'll let you decide for yourself. Okay, so let's move on to the big story of the day. Before I even get to the money quotes from that, I'm going to bring you two people who I rely on for good contributions. Keith Levenberg, who you may have seen do a whole segment with me. It's on YouTube now, when we were both in Tampa last week. This is about the story involving, what's her name? Ahmed, the supposed Trump staffer who was a Muslim in the White House, who just couldn't take any more of the discrimination and left. This is about the real story that came out, and the one you're going to have to look up is at the Weekly Standard, which is Bill Kristol's, but they do some good work. They really were the ones who did this. It's called Fake News. An ant got on my pad here. Fake News Exposed. Keith writes, it's by a guy named Lee Smith, by the way. Weekly Standard, Lee Smith, Fake News Exposed. Read it. I'm not going to give you the whole thing. I'm going to just give you a few teasers here. He highly recommends reading the Weekly Standard article on the fake Muslim in Trump White House story. Keith writes, "You knew that story was going to be BS, but the stench of the BS is even worse than you would have guessed it was going to be. Note how this article was shared all over the internet by the same people so quick to be," and he's not talking about the Weekly Standard piece, the original article. "Note how this article was shared all over the internet by the same people so quick to be outraged when they decide Trump or Kellyanne Conway is stretching the truth. Yet these people swallowed a howling lie, deliberately crafted to feed the liberal narrative hook, line, and sinker." Now, from the Lake Havasu City Bureau of Adam Taxin's Sunset Report, we have this from Gil Viator, who runs things over there, regarding Rumana Ahmed. She's the gal again who said she had to resign her position as Trump was a racist for not letting Muslims in. Gil writes, "It turns out she was an Obama appointee who was trying to burrow into a position, federal employee, in the administration. It turns out she had worked 3 days and had taken 4 days off, as it appears nobody wanted to hire her. She worked with a man named Price, where the two of them worked under the command of Ben Rhodes, who was a key guy in with Obama for foreign policy. Price explained to the Times, this in the Weekly Standard article, that their job was to market Obama's policies and, to his words, manipulate the public's opinion on policies as well. So, our daily dose of irony is big media falls for a fake news story by a lady whose entire job was to mislead the public." Now, I just want to give you a few money quotes, as I'll call them, from the actual Weekly Standard article by Lee Smith. Again, it's called Fake News Exposed. It's a must-read. Just Google it and get it. I'm just going to read you from the article. In an article on the Atlantic website, a former Obama White House staffer explains why she resigned from the Trump White House after only 8 days. Rumana Ahmed thought she should, quote, "try to stay on the NSC staff during the Trump administration," end quote. She writes, quote, "in order to give the new president and his aides a more nuanced view of Islam and of America's Muslim citizens." Is the audio not working? Someone tell me if it's not. I think it is. Gregory Fall, you're messaging me that it isn't. I think it's working. Someone comment that it is working okay. I would hate to be doing this if the audio isn't working. I'm not using the microphone because I was having problems with that, but when I use the internal mic, I don't think it's a problem. Larry Love, whoever's on there, Charles Schnurr, whoever is watching, Kevin Hatchett, please let me know that I know the picture is okay. Let me know that the sound is okay. Okay, it is working. Breaking my train of thought there. That's okay. Coming back to another money quote from Fake News Exposed in the Weekly Standard by Lee Smith. The basic premise of the story doesn't pass the smell test. Trump campaigned with an opening bid to temporarily ban all Muslims from entering the United States. He campaigned on that. But Ahmed wanted to stay on anyway, and then she left. After 8 days, when a much more lenient policy was implemented. It doesn't make sense. Another money quote. Again, I'm teasing you into going to the actual article. Ahmed was a political appointee in the Obama White House. Again, I'm doing this in part so you can counter the fake news out there. Ahmed was a political appointee in the Obama White House, according to Trump White House officials, who was very late in her tenure in the Obama administration when she applied for a civil position with civil service position with administrative duties. Burrowing, as it's commonly called, is the process through which political appointees move into career government status. She was granted her new status at the end of January, just as the Trump team was moving into the White House. That is, Ahmed took the highly unusual step for a White House staffer of choosing a considerably less ambitious career path in government as she went from a junior policy position to a secretarial post. Why? Because as a political appointee from the Obama administration, she was inevitably going to be replaced by a Trump appointee, and she wanted to stay on. And yet, in only 4 days, not 8, because, say sources, she took several days off, she came to the conclusion that she had failed in her attempt to influence the Trump team, which in fact was attacking the basic tenets of democracy. Right. It was a setup. The article was part of an information operation. Paired with that of her former office mate, Ned Price, Ahmed's story pushes the message that Trump is so bad that gifted public servants are resigning from their positions. See, that's the fake news they want you to have on the tip of your tongue. The Washington Post story from late January incorrectly reporting that the mass exodus of senior officials from the State Department was unique to the Trump White House rather than the normal bureaucratic turnover that greets every new administration. That touched on the same narrative. In this case, it seemed that Ahmed applied for a post only in order to resign from it after collecting a paycheck for 4 days, and who knows what money's coming behind the scenes. Thus, U.S. taxpayers covered research expenses for an Atlantic story. And that gives you enough. Again, last time I'm going to mention it, Google fake news exposed by Lee Smith in the Weekly Standard. And just a little bit more, Charles Schnurr, who is my moderate Republican in Philadelphia, wrote this. He's always very nuanced. I think he likes being a thorn in my side, but that's okay. It makes for a better so-called broadcast here on the so-called air. I don't know. It is a broadcast, but I'm not trying to pretend to be I'm not pretending to be a real news bureau. I'm just a guy, and the technology makes it possible for me to do something that I think is at least as informative and as insightful as some of the bigger names out there, including the networks. They're not telling you the stuff I just told you. Charles Schnurr is talking about the attack on a synagogue in Northeast Philly, not a synagogue, a cemetery, and also a number of Jewish community centers received bomb threats today. Of course, it could be the same person doing them all. You know, there's no reason you can't just call a few numbers, do it all within 3 minutes. Who knows what's really going on? But he writes, and I'm setting this up for Paul Palnick's comment in a second. He writes, when it turns out to be Muslims, I'll laugh, and then in parentheses, and cry at the left. When it turns out to be Trumpists, which he is not one, I'll laugh, and then in parentheses, and cry at the right. And that set me up very well for what Paul Palnick, who writes great stuff. He's in Columbus, Ohio. He's a noted cartoonist and artist over there. And I've gotten to know him in the last 6 months. And he's someone you should follow on Facebook. Paul Palnick, P-A-L-N-I-K. He writes, and I'm going to be hitting him up for comments all the time because I love what he writes. He writes, I am sick to death with those who accuse Trump of anti-Semitism. I just asked a highly educated liberal who is quite comfortable calling Trump an anti-Semite to list exact facts of hateful things that Trump has done aimed at Jews. One could hear crickets chirping from a great distance as he was silent. He then claimed the offenses were endless. I insisted on just one actual fact. He responded with an angry rant that he was incredulous how I can support such a woman-hating anti-Semite like Trump. Paul Palnick continues, questioning the liberals' hate for Trump seems to cause them great anxiety. It seems they need to hate him while accusing him of baseless, factless anti-Semitism. Liberalism can steal a person's soul. And let me end with that. I appreciate your comments. Whoa, we got the sun. Look at that. I didn't think it was happening. This really was a sunset report. Let me slowly talk so you can enjoy that for a second. I was blocking it the whole time. How do you like that? So I'm going to just say thank you for watching, but I really appreciate your comments, especially if you want to contribute some of the things. I think you see how I do it now. I certainly give my opinion enough, but if you want to have a bureau of Adam Taxin's Sunset Report, we're obviously trolling the traditional media here a little bit just to prove a point that I can give you an informative report and even give you something to look at where I actually am, as opposed to a background on a green screen in some studio. So I'm going to keep doing this. Hopefully I will do a sunrise report tomorrow. I may not have an actual sunrise, such has been the weather. But I appreciate your commenting on the things I brought up, telling me how I'm doing, telling me what I could be doing better, and offering commentary, but message me the commentary rather than putting it up here. That's the way on Facebook. Message me if you have something you'd like to say, more than just a couple sentences, you know, at least something that's going to take me a minute to say on the air. But I appreciate your watching. Enjoy that sunset, and I'll be back tomorrow with a sunrise report. Thanks for watching.